Hello, this is Paul here, and I'm going to show you how to do Boolean texture stuff in Blender. I already have it set up with the cycles render, and I'm using 2.79, so most of the 2.7 series and the new 2.8 should work. Boolean stuff, and maybe some trig stuff with procedural textures, because it's kind of neat how you can control things. And I'm not doing like your usual patterns like most people do. Just to demonstrate how this works, it's a little easier to grasp. I already have planes set up with the UV mapping here. Right now it's plain white, so there's nothing interesting to look at. And let's just get started. And I UV'd it, or created it with UVs to make it simpler, and I didn't really do mapping or anything. It's just auto-generated. But it's just for texture space purposes. So, talking about texture space, let's add texture coordinates. I don't need any object because it's an object. I'll also show you another little trick. Is what is it? Options. And there's an option for toggle node options, so you have extra stuff on your nodes. It's not a preset thing, but it lets you turn off some parts of nodes, so you don't need that. You can hide it. And if I'm just doing generated, I can hide this with Control H, just like you hide in anything else. But in this case, it toggles it both ways. And of course, you can minimize like that. So you can go hide that and change it, and now you got a really compact node. It's just something to know for your node layout stuff. And if you want it, you hit spacebar and there's your node options, and you got that. Alright. So if you see my nodes really small, that's how I do it. And I don't need this other stuff, so that just needs surface. We're just doing the booleans. Alright. So I'm just using the, not generated, but I will be using UV. There. That's all I need for now. So you're like, Paul, this isn't anything much to look at. Yeah, I know. So first we need our texture coordinate information, and we do that with converter. And we split the x, y, and z. Separate x, y, z. Take our vector output, and since this is UVs, we're only going to be using x and y. So if I take this channel out, you should get a gray value from 0 to 1 for all the x, and if I take this one out, you get all 0, 1 from y. In this case, the z is not used for UVs, and that's it. So how do we do anything interesting? We're going to use converter math nodes with functions. So greater than, less than, and multiply is handy because that's a Boolean and as well, and some other stuff. So alright, so we'll go with greater than. So we'll go x is greater than 0.5. Put that in the color slot, and anything where it is greater than 0.5, it will return 1, which is true, and 0, which is false. In this case, 1 is full 1 for every value, so you get white, and 0 is black. So, and you can also do less than, and it inverts it. You're like, well, that's not interesting enough yet. Well, we can also do this with a color XRGB colors. We want that in the factor socket, and you can make them different colors. So color 1 will be your 0 value, and color 2 will be your 1 value. So you can do like blue, gold, whatever, and make it green, stuff like that. You can move the gradient value down or up. So I haven't gotten into Booleans too much, but you can see kind of how the operator works with 0 and 1. So how does a Boolean AND work? We'll add another math node, and we'll do multiply, and I have to set that to 0. So if any value multiplied by 0 is 0, it's going to output 0, and then it's going to be your 0 value instead of your 1 value. Any value that's multiplied by 1 is going to output 1, and you'll get your 1 value. In this case, it's half the thing because we're using the greater than with the texture coordinate. So it's nothing too exciting yet. Now we can go change this to a less than and have that as greater than, and bump this up by 1 or 2, and we'll leave that one there. And now we'll use the multiply as a Boolean AND. So anything that is both less than 0.7 and greater than 0.5 will be multiplied. And now we get this bar, and it's nothing too exciting yet, but you're seeing what you can do with the Booleans and procedural textures. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. I can control where this bar of yellow is on the thing. But wait, there's still more. So we have all this, all that. Multiply. Yeah, I'm just going to move this over. And we can go shift. Just so you have a math node. I'm going to make this a subtract. Alright. Subtract. This one will be add. And 1. Okay. So now in this case we have 0.5, and we'll add 0.1 here and subtract 0.1 there, and we should get a band. And since we want to change the value that we're adding and subtracting from at the same time, use input and value. Like that. So now we have Booleans that are controlled by a value, and now we can move this band of color back and forth where the Boolean output is 1. See? So wherever the Boolean output is 1, that's where the band of color is. So in this case it is 0.3 plus 1, so it's going to be less than 0.3 plus 1, or greater than 0.3 minus 1. So that's where that band of white color is in our UV texture coordinate space. So you're like, that's not that interesting. But where the power of this starts coming in is when we start using node groups. So let's make a group that has all this stuff in the middle in it. Alright. Alright. And I'm going to make a node group. So we have the vector input, and it's going to split your channels here, and you're going to get a output, and I'm going to change some things here. So this, you don't need the value here, so probably get rid of that, because we're going to be pulling our values from the group input. So Let's go with, I don't know, it's a little tedious laying stuff out. So I have value output. I'm going to change the name of this value output to for vector, not vector, factor. Blah, blah, blah. And I am going to have also a color output. And I am going to make a vector bypass. So I am going to add some routing nodes, layout, reroute, and one over here. And this is just going to bypass it, but it makes it easier when you're doing your group node layouts. There's a reason for this. So you're not making spaghetti all over the place. I'm not sure how to explain it any better. There, like so. So now I have outputs of output, or this output will be called it's just a vector bypass, because that's all it's doing. It's bypassing the whole thing, but it's passing it through the node, so it just makes it easier to track what's going on sometimes. We'll have a factor and color output. Oh, we'll also want 2 color inputs in addition to our values. So let's just have a value input here for now. And then we will have the color inputs. So color 1, color 2, and in the case of this, it is also being controlled by the multiply. Alright, so this is our Boolean stripe color group in a node group. So now if we exit out, it's all in one little compact node group. So we have a stripe. And we can output colors. So this will be the background, and you can pass through the scene or the image in one and then have your stripe in the other. Or we can have see how this works? See why I thought this out? Or we can add a shader. Shader mix. Where is it? I believe it's yes, mix shader. You can have mission and I want to add another shader. Oh. Just showing how this can work. Alright. Make this diffuse. You can make this green. So we have green shader or this light emitting emission shader controlled by a factor. Hope I'm not boring you yet. This, I'm just going along, and we can take the factor output, and now the factor output is a 1 and 0 value that can control the bar, like so, for mixing. But if I wanted color output, I could just go color, and now we got color output. And that just makes things easier, so you're not spaghettiing like extra, what do you call it, color mix nodes in there. But I still leave a factor for other mixing, just to show you how that works. And so why do I do the vector bypass? Well, normally if I had a duplicate of this group, you'd be stringing vectors to vector, and you start getting all this extra stuff there. So what I do is I just do that, and it bumps and passes it through color 1. And now, because this doesn't have the vector data, I can just bypass the vector data. So it's actually just carrying it through, but it makes the layout cleaner. It's a personal preference, but you see, it's kind of neat. So you can just patch in series. So now this one will be on top. This is the first one, or I think that's right. I know the layer one of them is going to be on top. Well, I could just change this color. Okay, the last one is going to be on top. The answer is that. And in this case, the value is what? The horizontal position, right? So now I can move this, and now we have two stripes of two different colors. Give me this red or whatever. So now you can see how these groups work. You can get an idea that you can kind of draw stuff, right? Make shapes or whatever. And right now it's just blocks, but it shows what is possible, right? Because we're using Boolean stuff. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And let's make this into, instead of a bar, into a block. So it's going to be a little bit of a bigger layout. Now I'm going to do the bypassing for this color too. It's mostly straight, close to straight. I'm holding down shift when I drag to draw those like that. Two more handles. I'm going to drag those way up there too. Yeep. For what I'm doing, I don't need these for any other nodes, so just get them out of the way so I don't accidentally grab them. And sometimes in layouts where you do this routing, you can also rename the route handles. So I can name this vector bypass or whatever. You get the idea. So you can label these things if you have lots of stuff going on. And it's kind of like routing a bus on a circuit board or something. It's not needed for the rest of the circuit, so the bus just shoots across another part. You know, kind of same idea. And the way this is like. The way that nodes are like programming, but they're also like circuit boards. And circuit boards are like programming too. There's a certain kind of logic to how each component does things for functions. And this is generating a function, so why not? Alright. We have this we can leave here. We have add one and subtract one. So what I am going to do is have this value as something we can control, and I'm going to rename that value width, and this value here is going to be x position, because when you see them on the node, so now we have x position and width for our bar. This is our node group, and tab out. Yeah, we can tab out of the node group. So now we can control x position and width. So now I control x position, control the horizontal and the vertical. Yes. In this case, the horizontal. If you're old enough, you might get that meme or that joke. So you go like that, and that, and so right now it's still a band going across the whole thing. But if you realize the band is part of a Boolean function, all this, here. So that's neat, right? Yawn. Sorry. Everything short of the XYZ separator. So I am going to duplicate that. Alright, duplicate that. Shift D, duplicate. So now I am going to use the Y. Let me just drag this down here. So now the Y value for less than, Y value for greater than, and I'm going to do so when you get big layouts, that's also another reason for a rerouting node, because you can see when it starts getting big and get lost, you can go add layout, reroute, put one there, and you're going to label it so you can like say, hey, this is going to be Y. So now you know this is going to be the Y height. And then you can drag that down somewhere in your layout where you're closer to your nodes. And instead of trying to drag it like from 20 miles out in virtual space and get accidentally hooked to the wrong thing or something. Alright. And now we're going to name these instead of value and input or whatever. Drag this out a little bit more. This is going to be Y position. And it's going to be height. So we want Y position way up there. So we have X and Y position, and we have width and height. Alright. So we have our vector input, our X and Y position, width, height, and our two colors. You're like, well, it's not doing anything yet. It's because I need to do another multiply node. Okay. So, here's our multiply. That's a Boolean AND operator when I'm multiplying like this. Or Boolean ANDs. Alright, now there is nothing because I'm guessing there is no width and height set. And in theory, you can group these nodes inside a group for functionals. That's can do that. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I can. Because sometimes it's easier when building these nodes to create what are like various functions as node groups. I'm going to get to that later on. I think I'll cover. Maybe I'll just cover leaving this block, and anyone who's interested could follow on, and I'll do another one on trigonometry stuff, and that will give you angles and circles. So I might wrap this up now for this, and I'll just follow up quickly. But I'm going to exit out, and now we have X position and height. Yeah, there's no height. So now height has to have a value other than 0. Or a positive value, I should say. I could make that an absolute. You want the height to be an absolute value. Sure, we could do that. Here's the reason for it. The same with width. So, yeah, converter, math, and we'll do absolute. Where is it? All the way at the bottom. Okay. Absolute value. Can hide our unused sockets. Make it neat because it's only doing one thing. Some nodes are functional like one thing. It's just better to scrunch them down to a minimal for because you don't need all the other garbage here. And in this case, put those together. That over here, and then absolute value. And sometimes when these get real clustered together and you want to do layouts, you can reroute them and like a circuit board. Some people do spaghetti and it's hard to follow. Just say it's not that their thing is bad. It's just layout makes when you route them. Sometimes it's easier for the eye. Instead of having like 20 things overlapping, you're like, okay, where's that wire? This is like circuits before breadboards were invented, and this is like circuits after breadboards. So that's routing. Okay. If you look like inside an old amplifier, you'll know what I'm talking about, or you watch another YouTube video about that stuff. Anyhow. So now if we have height and negative, see absolute value, let's go. It doesn't matter which way, as long as there's a value, which is fine. Now we can control the X and Y position. So if you wanted to have Pong as part of your texture space, you can do Pong. Watch. You can do. We can do Pong. Watch. Look. Alright, so there's the one thing. And since I copied this as oh, needs the vector data. Yes. See, that's why I did the bypass instead of dragging it. So now I have player 2 has arrived, and see how this builds up. And now we need the little ball. So now we're playing a game of Pong. In theory, you could animate it and actually have it play Pong, but you get the idea. You can do funky stuff just with little Boolean functions here. And I think I'll do another one on Boolean and selectivity internodes, because we can do that. I'll cover that in another video. But that gives you an idea of what you can do with Boolean operators and procedural textures. And right now I just use the X and Y on UV to keep it simple. I think I'll do that in the other videos, but you can do X, Y, and Z's in 3D space. It gets a little more complicated because you're involving more vectors and stuff, but for now, that is that. And the nice thing about this texture coordinate is if I wanted to do stuff with the texture space, I could just do add vector mapping, and since I'm bypassing and passing through the input, right now it's fine, but I can just scale this up and down in our texture space and location as a whole. See how it's affecting everything, and I can rotate it. Whoa, see? It's all relative to the 0 in the texture space, but you can see what's going on. Or the location in the texture space. Just saying the mapping can do stuff like that. Alright. But that's how you can do some Boolean stuff in procedural textures and Blender cycles. And it is all that inside a node group that is simple to hook up, and you can just stack them. There might be some technical limit to how many you can do, but I haven't run into issues with it. And there's another caveat. There's like a bug. So if you are rendering in this, see this material space here? Some of these fancy node groups, if they get big enough, they will crash in material space. Or at least that's been my experience. So you're solid, but you're not really previewing, or you just have to skip past and do rendered. And rendered is usually quick enough for most of these adjustments, so yeah, you try previewing it material, you think that's going to be a good idea, and then you adjust the value here and it will freeze. Alright. And that is it for Boolean node groups, and I'll do another thing on Boolean selection, which will be interesting, and then I'll probably do the same but with adding trig functions.